welcome to this first lesson in public speaking, how to write a speech. So I want you to think back to any time that you've ever done a speech before. Ask yourself a few questions. How was it? Did you enjoy the experience? How did you go about writing the speech? Do you remember how many people were in the audience? Do you remember how you felt? All of these add up ultimately to how your experience was when saying that speech. Now, writing a speech is crucial, but can be very stressful for some of us, especially if you don't know how to write a speech. It really doesn't have to be stressful. It's going to be us going through it together, step by step, learning how to write a speech. Now, let's start our steps together. And I want you to remember to take notes. Don't just sit there staring at the screen. Take as many notes as you possibly can. Consider it a little cheat sheet of sorts. So, how do you take a speech topic and make it into a fully fledged good speech that you can say? So how do you go from complete creative chaos to a beautifully organized speech? That's what we're going to cover today. So, step 1, pick your topic. I'm sure you already have a topic in mind from the list that your teacher or your boss or your university professor gave you, but whatever the case may be, that is your first step. It's to pick your topic. Now, we're going to work with the example today, South Africa, my beautiful country. Now, I want you to choose a topic that you can say a lot about and a topic that you feel very passionate about. This will then become a wonderful speech because it can be something that you are very interested in, and that's going to reflect in not only the way you write it, but also later on the way you say it. So I want you to remember the rules of writing. Whenever we write anything, whether that be an essay, a speech, a friendly letter, we always have to follow the rules, which is a beginning, a middle, and an end. The only thing that differs, especially with a speech, is what goes in between. Right. So what goes in between largely depends on the type of speech that we encounter. Now, for the purposes of school, I'm going to cover 2 different kinds of speeches. Most of these also spill over into university and your job, so be sure to listen carefully. Our first kind over here is argumentative. Now, argumentative is obviously where you argue. You argue yes or no with the topic, and you either agree or disagree with it. And then informative, I think that also speaks for itself. It informs me. You tell me about it. You are basically the teacher. Both of these speeches use sources. Right, so now that you have your topic and you know what kind of speech it is, we are going to start writing. So remember the writing process. You plan, you do your first draft, you edit your first draft, and then only do you write your final draft. So today we're going to do the planning and the first draft together. Editing is a little bit more complicated, and I'm sure you'll be able to edit your own speech or give it to someone to edit. Now, let's plan. So if you can draw your attention here, I absolutely love planning with bullet points, and that's exactly what I did here. I used the first 4 topics of South Africa that popped into my head. I wrote them down. What makes South Africa so beautiful? All of those I wrote down. And then I just got a little quote there just to make sure that I know what's going on. Right. I never knew of a morning in Africa when I woke up and was not happy. This was said by Ernest Hemingway. So I like using quotes because it gives me direction and it gives me a little bit of creative flair, something that I can work with. Right, so now we're going to jump straight into writing our first draft. And I want you to remember that having writing a first draft, the scariest thing about that is just writing those first few words. So I just jotted a few words down here just to inspire myself and get over that first bit of fear of writing. So I have something to work with, and it works out quite well. Now, once again, we start with the beginning. I want you to think of the beginning as the introduction to your speech. Now, an introduction must have a few things to make sure that your audience knows exactly what's going on. So we have our attention grabber, and then we have our thesis statement. Now, an attention grabber is something catchy and interesting that'll make your readers sit up and really listen to you. Then a thesis statement, don't run away at this word. It's really not such a difficult word. It's usually just what your speech is about. Now, if you're wondering and if you're not sure, it's try and put the topic in your own words. That is what a thesis statement is. And we need to have these two things if we're going to introduce our speech wonderfully. A lot of people think they have to do long paragraphs going on for days. They really don't. An introduction needs to be short, succinct, and clear. That's exactly what we're looking for over here. Now, this is my introduction. Oh, country, my country, I truly live in the best country on earth, South Africa. Now, those of you who know the poem by Langston Hughes, or perhaps even Dead Poets Society, you will recognize this line here. I just took it and made it my own, and this is my attention grabber. I'm trying to get your attention. Then, after that, I'm giving my thesis statement. I truly live in the best country on earth, South Africa. I'm not putting too much emphasis on the beautiful. I'm interpreting it as the most beautiful, thus the best country on earth. But now this isn't enough. Now I need to convince my audience for the why. This is where we're going to refer back to those points we wrote down. Remember, we jotted 4 points down really quickly earlier and a quote just to give ourselves direction. This is where we refer back to those points. We're going to use them now one by one. So for our body is where we discuss the points. Now we wrote down 4. A good rule of thumb is that you need at least 3, especially if you're doing a school speech. When we get to 4 points, it gets a bit long. So if you've got a longer time limit with your speech, then by all means go on to 4. So we wrote down lovely weather, rich culture, great people, and those are the 3 that I'm going to use. Now, very important, you have to expand on this and you have to use sources. Now, this is my speech here on the side just for you to show you what exactly I did with every paragraph. So as I'm reading, see if you can listen out for the point and my piece of evidence, the source. It's very important to use sources because it shows that we put effort into our speech and we know what's going on. Right. South Africa. So we started with, oh country, my country. I truly live in the best country on earth, South Africa. Now we jump straight into our first point. South Africa is ideally situated at the tip of Africa, making it great weather-wise. Even though it's quite hot, it's still amazing. According to essayvenues.com, South Africa has anywhere from a Mediterranean climate to tropical. Who couldn't be happy with so much choice? We also have one of the most diverse cultural landscapes in history. This is why we are called the Rainbow Nation. According to South African toursandtravel.com, you cannot speak of one culture when mentioning South Africa. You probably think this means we have many strange people in our country. Well, we do, but that's what makes our country so great. Did you know that we are the only country that has 2 Nobel Peace Prize winners who lived on the same street? If that doesn't make our people great, I don't know what does. As I was reading, guys, could you recognize where each of these points were, as well as the source? Now, a very important point on sources that I want you to note. The specificity of your source is going to depend largely on what your teacher or professor or boss wants from you. Some superiors want entire sources, like according to this and this person at this and this website, or this and this book on this and this day. They want very specific Harvard referencing. That is all up to your teacher. And if you're not sure what kind of referencing you should be using, I suggest simply asking your teacher to clarify, or your superior. So, how do I end my speech off? Now, this is often very critical, and a lot of people leave this out. But this is where I want you to think of the ending as the conclusion. Now, conclusion speaks for itself. It concludes. I want you to summarize your points and also restate your thesis statement. Remember, we had those 3 points. Restate them for me again. Summarize what they said. Use a few different words if you have to. And then restate your thesis statement. Tell me, I think South Africa is the best country in the world because of this reason, and this reason. Okay, and this is how I chose to do it. So, with great weather, amazing people, and a diverse culture, South Africa is truly the most beautiful country in the world. Who doesn't love my beautiful country when everything about it is so lekker? So here I just played around with my format a little bit, and you can do it as well once you're an expert in the format. So here in this paragraph, I technically stated my thesis statement and all my points. So I didn't need to go on after that, but I just felt it was a little bit boring. That's why I decided to add this last phrase. And if you speak to many people around the world, the word that is synonymous with South Africa is lekker. And I want you to do the same type of thing in your speech. If it seems a bit dull, and if it's something that would bore you if you were an audience member, then try and take it one step further. Now is your turn, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you download the Learning Point speech writing cheat sheet. Try saying that 5 times fast. And remember to send us videos of you doing your speech. You can hashtag us or tag us. We'd love to see you doing your speeches. Have a wonderful day.